ever notice how fire sounds like it's trying to tell you something? Like it's whispering names you used to know. Tonight, 5 people sat around one fire, and by the end, none of them wanted to be the last one standing. We didn't plan on telling this many stories, but the fire was already lit, and no one wanted to be the first to leave. The woods were too dark, the silence too heavy, so we stayed and we talked. What you're about to hear isn't scripted. It's not folklore passed down through generations. These are things that happen to real people. At least, that's what they say. The fire crackles, someone shifts their weight, and the first voice begins. If a fire could remember the worst thing you ever did, would you still sit next to it? My grandfather died 3 years ago and left me his cabin in northern Michigan. I didn't want it. The place smelled like wet wood and old coffee, and the only heat came from a stone fireplace that took up half the living room wall. But my lease was ending. I had no job lined up, and winter was coming fast. So I packed my car and drove 8 hours into the woods. I thought I'd stay a week, maybe 2, clear my head, sort things out. I didn't expect the fire to know me better than I know myself. The first night was normal. I brought in some of the split logs from the covered pile out back, crumpled up newspaper, and got a decent flame going. It crackled the way fires do. I sat on the couch with a beer and my phone, scrolling through nothing, trying not to think about how quiet it was out here. No cars, no neighbors, just wind in the pines and the occasional creak of the cabin settling. Around midnight, I noticed something strange. The fire popped, loud, like a gunshot. I looked up and saw a face in the flames. Not a clear face, but the suggestion of one. The way smoke curls and wood glows, you know? It looked like my mom who I hadn't spoken to in 4 years. The same expression she had the last time I saw her. Tired, disappointed. I blinked and it was gone. I told myself it was nothing. Pareidolia. Your brain makes patterns out of chaos. I threw another log on and went to bed. The second night, I lit the fire earlier. I was curious, maybe a little creeped out, but mostly curious. I sat closer this time, watching the flames build. And again, maybe 20 minutes in, the fire snapped. This time I saw my high school girlfriend, Sarah. Same hollow look she had the night I broke up with her over text because I didn't want to deal with the crying. I felt my stomach drop. The image flickered, then faded into ember and ash. I didn't sleep much that night. By the third night, I knew it wasn't random. The fire was showing me people. People I'd hurt, people I'd ghosted, people I owed apologies to but never gave them. I started keeping a notebook, writing down who I saw and when. My old roommate who I bailed on for rent. My best friend from college who I cut off after he called me out for lying. My little sister who I promised I'd visit but never did. Every face was someone I'd failed, and the fire remembered all of them. I stopped lighting fire for 3 days. I used a space heater I found in the closet and wore 2 jackets inside. But the cold got worse. The kind of cold that gets into your bones and doesn't leave. The kind that makes your fingers stiff and your breath visible even indoors. On the 4th night, I gave in. I needed the heat. I needed to see if it would happen again. I built the fire slow, 1 log at a time. I didn't use kindling. I wanted control over it. I wanted to see if I could somehow prevent the faces from showing up. But the moment the flames grew past the height of my hand, it started. I stayed in the cabin for another month. I kept the fire going every night, but the faces never came back. Maybe they didn't need to. Maybe I'd already learned what I was supposed to learn. I started making calls, real calls, not just apologies, but conversations. I asked my mom how she was doing. I checked in on my sister. I sent my old roommate the money I owed him, plus interest. Some people didn't respond. Some people told me to leave me alone. I didn't blame them. But a few people talked to me. A few people forgave me. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy, but it's better than pretending none of it happened. Before I left the cabin, I stood in front of the fireplace one last time. I didn't light it. I just put my hand on the stone and said thank you. I don't know if the fire hurt me. I don't know if it cared, but I needed to say it anyway. My grandfather built this place as a refuge, a place to think, to remember, and in a way, the fire had become part of that. It didn't let you forget. It didn't let you lie to yourself. It held you accountable in a way nothing else could. I don't know if I'll ever come back. Part of me wants to. Part of me is scared to. Because if I do, the fire will be waiting, and it will remember everything.
First came my dad. I hadn't thought about him in years. He left when I was 9, just walked out one Saturday morning and never came back. But the fire showed him anyway, standing in the kitchen doorway, holding a suitcase. I remember that day. I remember asking where he was going and him not answering. And I remember the anger I felt, the anger I still feel. But this time, I saw something else. I saw myself, 10 years later, standing in a doorway, holding a duffel bag, walking out on my ex without explanation. I did the same thing he did. I became what I hated. The fire held that image for a long time, long enough for me to feel it, to sit with it. Then it moved on. Next was my coworker, Ben. Nice guy, weird sense of humor. He invited me to his wedding 2 years ago, and I said I'd go. I didn't. I didn't even text him. I just forgot, or I didn't care enough to remember. The fire showed his face at the reception, scanning the crowd, looking for me. I felt sick. Then came my childhood dog, Max. I begged my parents for a dog when I was 12, swore I'd take care of him, feed him, walk him. I did for about 2 months. Then I got bored. My mom took over. Max died when I was in college. I didn't come home for it, didn't even call. The fire showed him waiting by the door, waiting for me. I started crying. I'm not someone who cries. I haven't cried since I was a teenager. But sitting there in my grandfather's cabin, alone, watching a fire show me every person and thing I'd ever let down, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The worst part? The fire didn't stop. It kept going, face after face, memory after memory. A teacher who believed in me when no one else did. A friend who lent me money I never paid back. A girl I led on because I was lonely. A cousin I made fun of in front of everyone at Thanksgiving. A neighbor who asked me to check on her cat while she was in the hospital, and I said yes, but never did. I didn't realize how many people I'd hurt, how many small cruelties I'd committed without thinking, how many times I chose convenience over compassion. The fire knew. It had been burning in this cabin for decades, watching my family, watching my grandfather, and now it was watching me. I thought about putting it out, dousing it with water, letting the cabin freeze. But something stopped me. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the feeling that I deserved this, that I needed to see it, all of it. So I sat there, I watched, and I let the fire show me who I really was. By the time the flames died down to coals, the sun was starting to rise. I was exhausted, hollowed out. But something had shifted. I grabbed my phone and opened my messages. I scrolled through old conversations, people I hadn't talked to in months, years. I started typing. I wrote to my mom first, just 2 words. I'm sorry. I didn't expect a response. I didn't deserve one, but I sent it anyway. Then Sarah, then my roommate, then Ben. One by one, I went down the list. Some messages were longer. Some were just apologies. Some were explanations I should have given years ago. I didn't know if anyone would respond. I didn't know if it would change anything, but I had to try, because the fire had shown me the truth. And the truth was this: I wasn't a bad person, but I'd done bad things, and I'd spent years pretending I hadn't. On the 7th night, I lit the fire one last time. I didn't know what to expect. Part of me hoped it would be blank, that maybe, after everything, the fire would let me off the hook. It didn't. This time, the flames showed me my grandfather. I barely remembered him. He died when I was 16, and I only visited the cabin a handful of times. But there he was, sitting in his chair by the fire, the same chair I'd been sitting in all week. He looked at me, not through me, at me, and then the fire spoke. I don't mean I heard a voice. I mean I understood, the way you understand in a dream. The fire wasn't punishing me. It wasn't trying to hurt me. It was trying to teach me. My grandfather had built this fireplace with his own hands. He'd sat by it every winter for 40 years. And in that time, the fire had absorbed everything, every fight, every regret, every moment of silence that should have been filled with words. The fire had seen him make the same mistakes I'd made, and it had seen him fix them. The image of my grandfather faded, and in its place, I saw myself, not as I was, but as I could be, older, calmer, sitting by this same fire with people around me, family, friends, people who mattered, people I hadn't pushed away. It wasn't a guarantee, it was a possibility, a future I could choose if I wanted it badly enough. The fire crackled one last time, then settled into a low, steady burn. I understood. This was the last lesson. The fire had shown me the past, it had shown me the pain I'd caused, and now it was showing me the way forward. I pulled out my phone and opened my messages. My mom had responded. 3 words. I forgive you. I read it 5 times. Then I put the phone down and stared into the flames. For the first time in years, I didn't see ghosts. I just saw fire.
I heard my name in the fire. Not once, not twice, 7 times. And I wasn't alone when it happened. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in spirits or hauntings or any of that paranormal stuff people post about online for attention. I'm a data analyst. I work with numbers and patterns and things that make logical sense. So when I tell you that a fire spoke my name, I need you to understand how much it goes against everything I am to even say that out loud. But it happened, and I have a witness. And no matter how many times I've tried to explain it away, I can't, because the fire knew things it shouldn't have known, and it wanted me to hear them. It started on a Friday night in February. My girlfriend, Rachel, and I rented a cabin in Vermont for the weekend. One of those rustic places with no Wi-Fi and questionable plumbing, but it had a massive stone fireplace, and the pictures looked nice. We needed a break from the city. Work had been crushing me for months, and Rachel had been dealing with family stuff. We just wanted to disconnect. The cabin was colder than we expected, the kind of cold that makes you wonder if the heater even works. There was a note on the counter from the owner. Fireplace works great, plenty of wood out back. Enjoy your stay. So we bundled up, grabbed some logs, and I spent 20 minutes figuring out how to actually start a fire. Rachel laughed at me the whole time. I'm not outdoorsy. I grew up in apartments. But eventually I got it going. The flames caught, the wood popped, and warmth started filling the room. We opened a bottle of wine, put on some music from Rachel's phone, and sat on the floor with blankets. It was perfect, exactly what we needed. Around 9, Rachel went to the bathroom. I was alone with the fire, scrolling through my phone even though service was terrible. That's when I heard it. Emma. Quiet, almost buried in the crackle of burning wood, but clear enough that I looked up. I stared at the fire. The flames moved the way flames do. Nothing unusual. I shook my head and went back to my phone. I was tired. My brain was playing tricks. Then I heard it again. Emma. Louder this time, still woven into the sound of the fire, but distinct, like someone saying my name from the other side of a wall. My heart started pounding. I stood up and looked around the cabin. The door was locked, the windows were shut. Rachel was still in the bathroom. I could hear the sink running. "Rachel?" I called out. "Yeah?" she shouted back. "Did you say something?" "No, why?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the fire. It popped again, and this time I swear I heard a whisper underneath it. Not my name, something else. Something I couldn't make out. When Rachel came back, I didn't tell her. I didn't want to sound crazy. We went to bed around 11. The cabin only had one bedroom, and the bed was old and creaky, but we were exhausted. I fell asleep fast, but I didn't stay asleep. I woke up at 2 in the morning to the sound of crackling. The fire was still going. I'd left it burning low, but now it sounded loud, active, like someone had just thrown a fresh log on. I sat up and looked toward the living room. Orange light flickered on the walls. "Rachel?" I whispered. She didn't move. She's a heavy sleeper. I got out of bed and walked to the doorway. The fire was bigger than I'd left it. Not roaring, but definitely stronger. And standing there in my pajamas, arms crossed against the cold, I heard it again. "Emma, come here." My blood went ice cold. It wasn't my imagination this time. It was clear. A voice, female, calm, coming from the fire. I should have woken Rachel. I should have left the cabin entirely. But instead, I walked closer. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe? Or disbelief so strong that I needed to prove to myself it wasn't real. I stopped a few feet from the hearth. The flames moved in a way that didn't make sense. They bent toward me. Not dramatically, not like in a movie, just slightly, like they were leaning in. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice shook. The fire popped. Then the voice came again, woven into the crackle. "You know who I am." I didn't. I really didn't. But the voice sounded familiar in a way I couldn't place, like a memory I couldn't access, like something buried. "I don't know you," I said. The flames flickered. For a moment, I thought I saw a shape in them, a silhouette, a woman maybe, but it was gone before I could focus. "You forgot me," the voice said, "but I didn't forget you." My chest tightened. I felt like I was going to pass out. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be real. I'm a logical person. I don't believe in things I can't measure or test. But I was standing in front of a fire that was talking to me, and I had no explanation. "What do you want?" I asked. The fire crackled louder, and then it said something that made my legs almost give out. "You left me in the car." I stumbled backward. My hand flew to my mouth. No, that was impossible. Nobody knew about that. Nobody except me, and Rachel, and my therapist, and I hadn't even told my therapist the full story. When I was 8 years old, I had a dog named Comet, a golden retriever, my best friend. One summer day, my mom took me to the store, and we brought Comet with us. She told me to wait in the car with him while she ran inside. It was hot, I was bored, and I saw my friend from school across the parking lot. I left the car to say hi. I was gone maybe 10 minutes. When I came back, my mom was screaming. Comet had collapsed. Heat stroke. He died on the way to the vet. I never forgave myself. I never told anyone the real reason I got out of the car. I let my mom think it was her fault for leaving us there too long. I was 8. I was scared, and I buried it. But the fire knew. "How do you know that?" I whispered. The flames surged. The voice came again, sharper now. "I know everything you've buried, Emma. I know the things you don't say out loud. I know the guilt you carry in the middle of the night when you can't sleep." Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I'm a logical person. I said, "Stop. Please stop." The fire didn't stop. You think you've moved on. You think you've grown. But you're still that little girl who ran away. You're still running. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw water on the fire and kill it, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, shaking, listening to a voice I didn't recognize tell me truths I'd spent 20 years trying to forget. And then Rachel's voice cut through the room. "Emma?" I spun around. She was standing in the doorway, squinting at me in the firelight. "Who were you talking to?" "Did you hear it?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Hear what?" "The fire, the voice. Did you hear it?" She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Emma, there's no voice. It's just a fire." I turned back toward the hearth. The flames were calm now. Low. Normal. The voice was gone. "I heard it," I said quietly. "I heard it say my name." Rachel walked over and put her hand on my shoulder. "You're exhausted. You've been working too much. Come back to bed." But I didn't move, because I knew what I heard, and I knew it wasn't just exhaustion or stress or my brain playing tricks. The fire had spoken, and it had dragged something out of me I thought I'd buried forever. We stayed one more night. I didn't want to. I wanted to leave immediately, but Rachel convinced me to stay. She thought I'd had a panic attack. She thought the isolation and the stress and the lack of sleep had gotten to me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was losing it. But that second night, it happened again, and this time Rachel heard it too. We were sitting by the fire after dinner. Rachel was reading. I was just staring into the flames, half afraid, half mesmerized. And then the voice came back. "Emma." I froze. Rachel looked up from her book. "Did you just hear that?" she asked. My heart nearly exploded. "Yes, you heard it?" "I heard something," she said slowly. "It sounded like..." "Emma," the fire said again, louder, clearer. Rachel dropped her book. "What the hell?" We both stood up. The fire wasn't doing anything unusual. It wasn't growing or shrinking or changing color. It just looked like a fire. But the voice was there, unmistakable. "Who are you?" demanded Rachel. She was braver than me. The fire crackled, and then the voice said something that made both of us go silent. "I'm the part of Emma she tries to forget." Rachel looked at me. I couldn't look back. My face was burning with shame and fear, and something I couldn't name. "I don't understand," Rachel said. "She does," the fire replied, and then it went quiet. The voice didn't come back. The flames just burned. Normal. Silent. Like nothing had happened. Rachel grabbed my hand. "Emma, what is it talking about?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her I didn't know, but I couldn't. Not after that. Not after the fire had said it out loud in front of her. So I told her everything about Comet, about the car, about the guilt I'd carried for 20 years, about how I'd let my mom take the blame because I was too scared to tell the truth. Rachel listened. She didn't interrupt, and when I was done, she just hugged me. We didn't talk about the fire after that. We didn't need to. It had said what it needed to say. We left the cabin the next morning. I didn't sleep that second night. I just lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the fire burn itself out in the other room. By the time the sun came up, the cabin was cold again. The fire was dead. Before we left, I stood in front of the fireplace one last time. I don't know what I expected. Maybe another message, maybe an explanation. But there was nothing. Just ash and charred wood. Rachel loaded the car while I locked up. On the drive home, she asked if I thought it was real. I don't know, and I still don't. Part of me thinks it was psychological, that the isolation and the guilt I'd been suppressing for years finally broke through in some kind of auditory hallucination, that Rachel heard it because I made her believe she heard it, that it was all just stress and exhaustion and coincidence. But part of me knows better, because the fire said things I'd never told anyone. It knew details I'd buried so deep I almost forgot them myself, and it spoke with a clarity that didn't feel like my own mind talking back to me. I don't go near fireplaces anymore. Rachel thinks I'm being paranoid. Maybe I am. But every time I see flames, I feel like they're watching me, waiting, listening for the things I don't say out loud. I don't know what was in that cabin. I don't know if it was a spirit or an echo or something entirely else, but it knew my name, and it knew my shame, and it made sure I couldn't ignore it anymore.
I found ash under the floorboards of a cabin that hadn't seen fire in 30 years. The next morning, there was more, and it was still warm. I'm a drifter. I don't say that to sound cool or mysterious. It's just what I am. I work seasonal jobs, save up some money, then move to the next place. I've been doing it for 6 years now. No lease, no permanent address, just me and my truck and whatever fits in the back. Last winter, I got a job as a caretaker for a property in northern Wyoming. Middle of nowhere. One cabin, no neighbors for miles. The owner said I just had to check on the place once a week and make sure pipes didn't freeze. Easy money. I thought I'd be alone out there. I was wrong. The cabin was old, but not falling apart. Wood siding, tin roof, small porch with a bench that had seen better days. Inside was basic. One room with a kitchenette, a cot, a table, and a wood stove in the corner. The owner told me the stove hadn't been used in decades, said it was safer to use the electric heater instead. Something about the chimney not being up to code. Fine by me. I'm not picky. The first week was quiet. I'd drive out every few days, check the pipes, make sure nothing looked broken, then leave. I wasn't staying there. I had a motel room in town, about 40 minutes away. But one night, my truck broke down halfway back. Timing belt snapped. I called a tow, but the guy said he couldn't get to me until morning. So I walked back to the cabin. It was either that or freeze on the side of the road. I got there around 10, unlocked the door, turned on the heater. The place was cold as hell, but it warmed up quick. I lay down on the cot with my jacket still on and closed my eyes. I wasn't planning to sleep long, just until morning. Around midnight, I woke up coughing. The air smelled like smoke. Not strong, just enough to notice. I sat up and looked around. No fire. The heater was running fine. The wood stove was shut tight, just like it always was. But the smell was there. I checked the stove anyway, opened the door. Nothing inside. Just old ash caked to the bottom. Hadn't been touched in years. I went back to the cot and tried to ignore it, but the smell got stronger. I got up again and started looking around. That's when I noticed the floorboards near the stove. One of them was loose. Not broken, just loose, like it had been pried up and put back down. I pulled it up. Underneath was a small space, maybe 6 inches deep, and inside that space was ash. Fresh ash, gray and soft like it had just cooled down. I touched it. It was warm. I dropped the board and stepped back. How the hell was there warm ash under a floorboard in a cabin with no fire? I looked at the wood stove again. Still cold, still untouched. I checked the heater. Electric. No ash. No source. But the ash was real. I could see it. I could feel it. And it was warm. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on the porch with my flashlight and waited for the sun to come up. Every few minutes, I'd go back inside and check the floorboard. The ash was still there, still warm. By the time dawn hit, I'd convinced myself it was some kind of residual heat from the ground, maybe a hot spring or underground thermal activity. It didn't make sense, but it was better than the alternative. The tow truck came around 8, got my truck sorted. I drove back to the motel and didn't think about the cabin for 2 days, but I couldn't stop thinking about the ash, so I called the owner. "Hey, quick question," I said. "That wood stove in the cabin, when's the last time it was used?" There was a pause. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious." Another pause, longer this time. 30 years, maybe more. My father used to stay there in the winters. After he died, we stopped using the stove. Why? Is something wrong? "No," I lied. "Just making sure I don't need to clean it out or anything." "Don't touch it," he said, firm. "Chimney's not safe. Just leave it alone." Got it. I hung up. 30 years. The ash I found was warm, fresh. That didn't add up. I drove back out to the cabin the next day. I told myself I was just doing my job, checking on things. But really, I needed to see if the ash was still there. Part of me hoped it would be gone, that I'd imagined the whole thing. I unlocked the door and went straight to the floorboard. I pulled it up. There was more ash, twice as much as before, and it was still warm. I sat back on my heels and stared at it. This wasn't thermal activity. This wasn't leftover heat. This was something else. I scooped some of the ash into my hand. It was fine, soft, the kind you get from burning wood. I smelled it. Smoke, faint, but there. I put the board back and stood up. My hands were shaking. I walked over to the wood stove and opened it again. Empty, same as before. I checked the walls, the ceiling, the windows, looking for soot or scorch marks or anything that would explain this. Nothing. I sat down at the table and tried to think. Ash doesn't just appear. Fires don't burn underground without leaving a trace. There had to be a logical explanation, but I couldn't find one.
That night, I stayed at the cabin again. Not because my truck broke down, because I needed to know what was happening. I set up my sleeping bag on the cot and kept my flashlight next to me. I didn't turn off the lights. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting. Around 2 in the morning, I heard something. A sound like paper crumpling, slow, rhythmic. I sat up and looked toward the wood stove. The door was closed, but the sound was coming from inside it. I got up, walked over, put my hand on the stove. It was cold. I opened the door. The inside was empty, but the sound was still there, closer now. I looked down at the floorboard, the loose one. I pulled it up. The ash was moving. Not like wind was blowing it, like something underneath it was shifting, pushing up. I watched as the ash formed a pattern, lines, shapes. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. Letters. The ash spelled out a word, 3 letters. Run. I dropped the flashlight. It hit the floor and rolled under the table. The cabin went dark, except for the moonlight coming through the window. I grabbed my flashlight, stuffed my sleeping bag into my backpack, and got the hell out of there. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. I threw everything in the back, started the engine, and drove. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't slow down. I just drove until I hit town. The next morning, I called the owner and quit. Told him I had a family emergency and couldn't do the job anymore. He didn't argue, just said he'd mail my last check. I didn't tell him about the ash. What would I even say? But a week later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up the property records online, found an old news article from 32 years ago. A man had died in that cabin, the owner's father. He'd fallen asleep by the wood stove and it had overheated. The cabin caught fire. He didn't make it out. The article said they found his body near the door. Most of him, anyway. The fire had been so hot that parts of him turned to ash. They buried what they could, but according to the report, some of the remains were never recovered. They were assumed to have been lost in the fire or scattered. I closed my laptop and sat there for a long time. The ash under the floorboards, the warmth, the smell of smoke, the word in the embers. run. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was a memory. Or maybe something was still burning in that cabin. Something that never went out. I should have left it alone. I should have taken the warning and moved on with my life. But I couldn't. 3 weeks later, I drove back to the cabin. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Maybe I just needed to see it one more time. It was late afternoon when I got there. The cabin looked the same, quiet, empty. I parked my truck and walked up to the porch. The door was still locked. I used the key the owner had given me and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. Smoke, stronger than before. I covered my mouth and looked around. The wood stove was open. I didn't leave it open. I know I didn't. And inside the stove was a fire, a small one, barely more than embers, but it was burning. I walked closer. The fire wasn't giving off heat. It was just there, glowing, and underneath it, I could see something. I grabbed a stick from outside and poked at the embers. They shifted, and underneath them was a bone, small, charred black, a finger bone maybe, or part of a hand. I dropped the stick. The fire flared up for a second, then died back down, and in the ash around the bone, I saw more letters, different this time. Stay. My legs went weak. I backed toward the door, but before I could reach it, the floorboard near the stove gave way. Not broke, just sank, like something underneath had collapsed. I looked down into the hole. It was filled with ash, piles of it, and in the center, partially buried, was a skull. I didn't wait to see more. I ran, got in my truck, drove until I couldn't see the cabin in my mirror anymore. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. I called the owner that night, told him what I found. He hung up on me. 2 days later, I got an email from him. It just said, "Stay away from my property. Do not contact me again." I haven't been back, and I'm not going back. I don't work caretaker jobs anymore. I don't take gigs in the middle of nowhere. I stay in towns, places with people, places with lights. Because I learned something in that cabin that I can't unlearn. Some fires don't go out. They just burn underground, in the dark, where no one can see them. I did some more digging after I left, talked to a few locals in the area who remembered the fire. One old guy told me the owner's father didn't die by accident. He said the man had been burning something the night of the fire. Letters, maybe, or photographs. Things he didn't want anyone to find. The guy said the fire started because he was trying to burn too much at once, that the stove couldn't handle it. And when the cabin caught, he tried to hide what was left, tried to bury the evidence under the floorboards. But fire doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. I still think about the ash, about the bones, about the word in the embers. Stay. Like whatever was left in that cabin wanted company, like it was tired of burning alone. I don't know if the owner ever went back. I don't know if he found what I found, and I don't care. I'm done with that place, done with cabins in the woods, done with fires that shouldn't exist. But sometimes, late at night, I'll smell smoke, faint, like it's coming from far away, and I'll check my hands, just to make sure there's no ash on them.
We burned my mother's house to the ground. Insurance paid out. We moved on. Then 6 months later, I drove past the empty lot and saw smoke rising from the dirt. My mother died in a fire. That's the simple version. The real version is longer and harder to tell, but I'm going to try. She was a hoarder. Not the kind you see on TV where it's just clutter and old newspapers. The kind where there were paths through rooms, where you couldn't see the floor, where every surface was piled high with things she couldn't let go of. I begged her to clean it up. I offered to help. She'd say yes, then change her mind. 3 years ago, the fire started in the kitchen. Electrical, they said. She didn't make it out. I inherited the property, and I made the hardest decision of my life. I burned the rest of it down. The fire department had already gone through the house after my mom died. They cleared it for investigation, took what they needed, then released the property to me. I went inside once, just once, to see if there was anything worth saving. There wasn't. The kitchen was gutted, black walls, collapsed cabinets, the smell of melted plastic and burned wood so strong it made my eyes water. But the rest of the house was worse, because it was untouched. All her things were still there, boxes stacked to the ceiling, bags of clothes she'd never worn, furniture buried under decades of newspapers and magazines. I stood in the living room and felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't clean it out. I couldn't go through it piece by piece and decide what to keep and what to throw away. I couldn't spend months in that house, breathing in the smell of smoke and memories. So I called a demolition company. They said they could tear it down, haul everything away, but when they came out to give me an estimate, the guy took one look and shook his head. This is a fire hazard. Half this stuff is going to combust if we're not careful. You're better off doing a controlled burn first. Clear out the debris. Then we bulldoze what's left. So that's what we did. They got the permits, brought in the fire department to supervise, and on a cold Saturday morning in November, they set my mother's house on fire. I stood across the street and watched it burn. The flames were huge, orange and red and hungry. They ate through the walls in minutes. The roof collapsed. The windows shattered. I watched 20 years of my mother's life turn to smoke and ash. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just felt numb. Relieved, maybe, like a weight had been lifted. When it was over, all that was left was a blackened foundation and piles of ash. The demolition crew came back the next week and cleared the rest, hauled it all away. By the end of the month, it was just an empty lot, dirt and grass and nothing else. I put the property up for sale. No one bought it. The realtor said it was the location, too far from town, too isolated. But I didn't care. I didn't want the money. I just wanted it gone. I wanted to stop thinking about my mother and that house and the fire that took her. For 6 months, I didn't drive past the property. I avoided that road entirely. And then one day I had to. Detour for construction. No other way around. That's when I saw the smoke. At first, I thought someone was burning trash. People do that out in the country, burn their leaves and branches in the fall. But as I got closer, I realized the smoke was coming from my mother's lot, the empty lot, the one with nothing on it. I pulled over and got out of my car. The smoke was thin, gray, rising from the center of the lot like a campfire. But there was no fire, just smoke. I walked closer. The grass was dry. It was late spring, no rain in weeks. If there was a fire, the whole field should have caught. But it hadn't. The smoke was just there, rising from the dirt. I got down on my knees and looked. The ground was warm, not hot, just warm, like something underneath was burning. I put my hand on the dirt. I could feel it, a faint heat. I started digging with my hands. The soil was loose, soft. A few inches down, I found ash, fresh ash, black and fine, like it had just cooled. I stood up and backed away. This didn't make sense. We'd cleared everything. The demo crew had hauled it all away. There was nothing left to burn. But the ash was real, the smoke was real, and the ground was warm. I called the fire department, told them what I saw. They sent someone out, a young guy, mid-20s. He walked the lot with some kind of heat sensor, checked the ground, took some readings. Then he came back to me and shook his head. No active fire, he said. No hot spots. Whatever you saw, it's gone now. But it wasn't gone. I could still smell it. Smoke. Faint, but there. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he just didn't care. Could be organic material buried in soil can smolder for a while, especially if it's dry, but it'll burn itself out. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think it was just leftover debris, something we missed. But I knew it wasn't, because the smoke wasn't random. It was coming from the exact spot where the house used to stand, where the living room had been, where my mother died. I started driving past the lot every day. I don't know why, maybe I was hoping it would stop, that whatever was burning underground would finally go out, but it didn't. Every time I drove by, there was smoke, thin, gray, rising from the same spot. After 2 weeks, I couldn't take it anymore. I called the demolition company, told them I needed them to come back, dig up the lot, clear it down to bedrock if they had to. They thought I was crazy, but I paid them, and they came. It took them 3 days. They brought in an excavator, dug up the entire lot, 6 feet down. They found ash, piles of it, more than there should have been. The crew boss called me over. "I don't know how this got here," he said. "We cleared this place. There shouldn't be anything left." But there it was, layers of ash, some of it compressed, some of it loose, and underneath it something else. Pieces of metal warped and melted, a doorknob, hinges, parts of a bed frame, things we should have hauled away months ago, but they were here, buried, like they'd been put back.
"We're taking all of it," I said. "I don't care what it costs, I want every piece of this gone." They loaded it into trucks, hauled it to a landfill 2 counties over, and when they were done, the lot was empty. Just a pit of fresh dirt. No ash, no metal, nothing. I didn't go back for a month. I was afraid to. Afraid that the smoke would still be there. But eventually, I had to check. I drove out on a Sunday afternoon, parked across the road, walked over to the lot. No smoke. The dirt was flat, dry, normal. I exhaled. It was over. Finally. I got back in my car and started to drive away, but then I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw it. A thin line of smoke rising from the center of the lot, right where the house used to be. I stopped the car, got out, walked back. The smoke was there, faint but real. I knelt down and touched the ground. Warm. I started digging. Ash, fresh ash, warm in my hands. I screamed. I didn't mean to, it just came out. A raw, desperate sound. I dug faster, deeper, trying to find the source, trying to understand. And then my hand hit something hard. I pulled it out. It was a picture frame, burned, blackened, but intact. I turned it over. Behind the cracked glass was a photo of my mother, smiling, standing in front of the house. I didn't recognize the photo. I'd never seen it before, but it was her, and she was holding something, a match. I dropped the frame. It landed in the dirt, face down, and the smoke stopped. I didn't touch the frame again. I left it there, face down in the dirt, and I called a priest. I'm not religious, my mother wasn't either, but I didn't know what else to do. The fire wouldn't stop, and I was out of options. The priest was older, kind. He didn't ask too many questions, just listened, and when I was done explaining, he nodded. "Sometimes," he said, "the dead hold on to the things they loved, even if those things hurt them." He came to the lot the next day, brought holy water and a Bible and some kind of oil in a small vial. He walked the property, said prayers in Latin I didn't understand, sprinkled water on the dirt, and when he got to the center where the smoke had been rising, he knelt down. He picked up the picture frame, looked at it for a long time, then he set it down gently and poured oil over it. He struck a match and lit the frame on fire. I almost stopped him, but I didn't. I just watched. The frame burned quickly. The photo curled and blackened. The glass cracked and shattered. And when it was done, the priest covered the remains with dirt. "She was holding on," he said quietly, "to the house, to the fire, to the moment she died. She couldn't let go. And now?" I asked. "Now she can." The smoke didn't come back after that. Not the next day, not the next week. I drove past the lot a dozen times. Nothing. just dirt and grass. The ground was cool, the air was clear. It was finally over. But a month later, I got a call from the realtor. Someone wanted to buy the property, a developer. They were going to build a new house. I almost said no, almost told them the lot wasn't for sale, but I didn't, because I realized something. My mother had built her prison. She'd filled that house with things she couldn't let go of, and when it burned, she still couldn't leave. The fire had consumed her twice, once in life, once in death, and I couldn't let her burn a third time. So I sold the lot, signed the papers, took the money, and I never went back. They built a new house on the lot. I saw pictures online. It's nice, modern, big windows, nothing like my mother's house. I hope whoever lives there is happy. I hope they never find ash under the floorboards. I hope the ground stays cool. I moved 2 states away, started over, got a new job, a new apartment. I don't talk about my mother much. When people ask, I just say she passed. I don't mention the fire. I don't mention the smoke. I don't mention the picture of her holding a match, because no one would believe me. And honestly, I don't blame them. But I know what I saw. I know the fire came back, twice. And I know my mother was the one keeping it alive, not out of anger or revenge or anything like that, just because she couldn't let go. She'd spent her whole life holding on to things, and even in death, she couldn't stop. I think about her sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. I wonder if she's at peace now, if burning the photo finally released her, or if somewhere, in some other lot, in some other town, there's smoke rising from the ground, and she's still there, still burning, still holding on. I don't go near fireplaces anymore. I don't light candles. I don't even use the stove if I can help it, because fire isn't just heat and light. It's memory, it's grief, it's all the things we try to burn away but can't. My mother taught me that, not with words, but with smoke and ash and a picture frame that wouldn't stay buried. Some fires don't go out. They just wait.
There's a fireplace in the mountains that's been burning for 70 years. No one feeds it, no one tends it, and everyone who's ever sat beside it has left something behind. I'm 73 years old. I've lived in these mountains my whole life. I've seen things that don't make sense, things that people from the city would laugh at or try to explain away. But up here, we know better. We know that some places hold memory. Some stones remember what happened on them. And some fires never go cold, no matter how many years pass. I'm gonna tell you about one of those fires, not because I want to scare you, but because you need to know. If you ever find yourself in these mountains, and you see smoke rising from an old stone hearth in the middle of the woods, you need to turn around. You need to walk away, because the fire doesn't forget and it doesn't let go. The hearth sits about 8 miles north of the town I grew up in. It's not near any trails, not near any roads. You have to know where you're going to find it. And most people who know don't go there anymore. But when I was a boy, maybe 10 or 11, my father took me there. He didn't tell me why, just said we were going for a walk. We hiked through the woods for over an hour. My legs were tired, my feet hurt, but my father didn't stop. He just kept walking, like he was being pulled towards something. And then we stepped into a clearing, and I saw it. A stone hearth, big, old, built from river rock and mortar that looked like it had been there for 100 years. And in the center of it, a fire, small, steady, burning like someone had just lit it that morning. "Who built that?" I asked. My father didn't answer. He just walked closer. I followed. The fire was strange. It didn't crackle the way normal fires do. It didn't smoke much. It just burned, low and even, like it was breathing. "Sit," my father said. I sat on a flat rock near the hearth. My father sat across from me. We didn't talk. We just watched the fire. And after a few minutes, I started to feel something, a heaviness, like the air around the hearth was pressing down on me. I looked at my father. His face was pale. His eyes were locked on the flames. "Dad?" I said. He didn't respond. He just stared. And then, quietly, he started talking, not to me, to the fire. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know." I didn't understand. I didn't know what he was apologizing for. But his voice was shaking, and I could see tears on his face. I'd never seen my father cry before. "Dad, what's wrong?" I asked. He looked at me, and for a second I didn't recognize him. He looked older, tired, like something had been pulled out of him. "This fire," he said slowly, "it remembers." "Remembers what?" "Everything." He stood up, grabbed my arm, and we left. We didn't speak on the way back, and when we got home, my father went straight to his room. He didn't come out for the rest of the day. I asked my mother what was wrong. She just shook her head and told me not to bother him. But that night, I heard them talking. My father's voice was low, broken. He said something I didn't understand at the time. It showed me what I did. It showed me her face. I didn't know who he was talking about. I wouldn't find out until years later. I didn't go back to the hearth for a long time, not until I was in my 20s. By then, my father had passed. Heart attack, quick. He didn't suffer. But before he died, he told me something. "Stay away from that fire. Don't ever go back there." I asked him why. He just looked at me with those tired eyes and said, "Because it'll take something from you, and you won't get it back." But I didn't listen. I was young, stupid. I thought I could handle it. So one summer, I hiked out to the clearing, alone. The hearth was still there, and the fire was still burning, exactly the same as it had been 15 years before. I sat down, stared into the flames, and I waited. At first, nothing happened. The fire just burned, quiet, steady. Then I felt it, that same heaviness, that same pressure, and the fire started to change. The flames grew taller, brighter, and in the center of them, I saw something. A face. Not a clear face, just the suggestion of one. The way shadows form shapes on walls. But I recognized it. It was a girl I'd known in high school. Her name was Anna. We dated for a few months. She wanted something serious. I didn't, so I broke up with her. Didn't give her a reason, just said I wasn't interested anymore. She took it hard. I heard she dropped out of school, moved away. I never saw her again, and honestly, I didn't think about her much after that. But the fire remembered. The face in the flames looked at me, and I felt something break open inside my chest. Guilt, shame, regret, all the things I'd buried, all the things I told myself didn't matter. The fire pulled them out, made me feel them, made me see what I'd done. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. The fire held me there. And then I heard a voice, quiet, whispered, coming from the flames. "Why didn't you care?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out, because I didn't have an answer. I just didn't care, and the fire knew that. The face faded, the flames dropped back down, and I was left sitting there, shaking, staring at a fire that had just reached inside me and pulled out the worst part of who I was. I got up, I walked away, and I swore I'd never go back.
But over the years, I heard stories. Other people who'd found the hearth, who'd sat by the fire, and every single one of them said the same thing. The fire showed them something, someone, a memory they'd tried to forget, a person they'd hurt, a moment they regretted, and it didn't let them leave until they faced it. Some people said the fire was a spirit, an old god that lived in the mountains and demanded payment in the form of guilt and confession. Others said it was a curse, that someone had died by that hearth long ago, and their soul was trapped in the flames, feeding on the pain of everyone who came near. I don't know what it is, but I know it's real, and I know it's still burning.
10 years ago, a group of kids from town went looking for it, heard the stories, thought it would be fun, a dare. 3 of them went into the woods. Only 2 came back. The third one, a boy named Carter, didn't come back for 3 days. When they found him, he was sitting by the hearth, staring into the fire, unresponsive. They had to carry him out. He didn't speak for a week, and when he finally did, all he said was, "It knows. It knows everything." He left town after that, never came back. I heard he lives somewhere down south now, won't talk about what he saw. But his friends said the fire showed him something about his little brother, an accident that wasn't really an accident. I don't know the details, and I don't want to, because the fire doesn't just show you what you did, it shows you the truth, the version of events you've been lying to yourself about. The version you've buried so deep you almost believe your own story. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Last year, I went back one more time. Not because I wanted to, but because I felt like I had to, like the fire was calling me. I'm old now, I don't have much time left, and I needed to know if it was still there, still burning. It was. I sat down, same spot as before, and I waited. The fire didn't speak to me this time. It showed me my father, the same face he had that day when he brought me there as a boy. And I finally understood. My father had an affair before I was born. A woman in the next town over. She got pregnant. My father left her, told her to deal with it on her own. She did. And she died in childbirth. The baby didn't survive either. I never knew. My mother never knew. But the fire knew, and it made my father live with it every day for the rest of his life. Now it was making me live with it too. The fire didn't speak this time. It didn't need to. I saw everything. My father's face, the woman's face, the child who never got to live. And I felt the weight of it. Not just his guilt, but the guilt of carrying his secret now, of knowing what he did and not being able to do anything about it. I sat there for hours. The sun set, the woods got dark, but the fire kept burning, and I kept watching because I didn't know what else to do. At some point, I heard footsteps. Someone else was coming. I turned and saw a young woman, maybe 30. She looked lost, confused. She saw the fire and walked toward it. "Don't," I said. She stopped, looked at me. "Why not?" "Because it'll show you something, and you won't be able to forget it." She frowned. "Show me what?" "The worst thing you ever did. The thing you don't want to remember." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she looked at the fire, and I saw it in her eyes, the same pull, the same need to know. She sat down. I should have left. I should have walked away and let her deal with it on her own, but I didn't. I stayed because I didn't want her to be alone when it happened. The fire grew, the flames rose, and I saw her face change. She gasped, covered her mouth, tears streamed down her cheeks. She was seeing something, someone, and whatever it was, it broke her. After a few minutes, the fire dropped back down. She sat there, shaking, staring at the flames. I didn't ask what she saw. I didn't need to. I could see it written all over her face. "Why does it do this?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, "but it's been doing it for as long as I can remember, and it's not going to stop." She looked at me. "How do you make it stop?" "You don't. You just live with it." She nodded slowly. Then she stood up, wiped her face, and walked away. I watched her disappear into the trees, and then I looked back at the fire. It was still burning, steady, quiet, waiting for the next person, the next memory, the next secret. I stood up. My knees cracked. My back ached. I'm too old for this, too old to keep coming back. But I know I will, because the fire won't let me go. Not completely. None of us who've sat by it can truly leave. I'm telling you this now because I'm running out of time. My heart's not what it used to be. The doctor says I've got maybe a year, maybe less. And when I'm gone, someone needs to know about the hearth. Someone needs to remember. The fire has been burning for 70 years, maybe longer. I don't know who built it. I don't know why it's there, but I know what it does. It holds memory. It holds guilt. It holds every terrible thing we've ever done and forces us to look at it, to feel it, to carry it. And it never goes cold. People have tried to put it out, poured water on it, smothered it with dirt, covered it with stones. But the next day, the fire is always back, burning, waiting, remembering. And when you sit beside it, it will show you who you really are. Not who you think you are, not who you pretend to be, but the truth, the version of yourself you've been running from your whole life. The fire popped once, and no one spoke after that.